All right, guys, I am working tonight, so I wanted to get another video in, a video or two. I'll have an update on my doctor's appointment, but I have a lot to talk about. I want to encourage you, moms, as I talk about abortion on this channel, to be willing to go through a lot with your kids. Don't be afraid of going through stuff. So with my second born, I have not heard from him. This is the longest I have not heard from him. And we are looking for him and just, caring about him. He is all grown up. So, a lot of people feel like, okay, once they're 18, which is true, they are an adult, but it doesn't mean that you don't care anymore, right? It's not like, oh, okay, we're done with you. You're an adult, so don't bother with us anymore. It's not like that. You have invested in your kids for years. You kind of like I as a mom have my own life. I am busy doing what I want in my life, which I love working. I love being around people. Um, but I have my own goals. I'm still going to be taking a, motorcycle class and everything that I have planned for the next like year. I have my own life, right? But there's a time that you still, ask how your kids are doing. You don't run their life. They don't even have to bother with you if they don't want to. They have their own life. I was talking to one of my sons on Facebook yesterday and just seeing how he's doing. That's it, just because it was Thanksgiving. And I only talk to him sometimes. And then my other sons are busy working and I don't always talk to them. I have days that I don't really see them, and it's fine. I don't have to see them all the time. But you do want to stay connected on some level with your kids. So, one of the things you want to do as a mom is you want to be able to be there, to have some kind of support for your kids. It's not financial. You don't have to financially help them. You don't have to, they're on their own. You don't make decisions for them, but you love them, right? I wanted to talk about some things like with my second son, just going through so much stuff, so much. And I had talked about a couple things yesterday that he had gone through. So, who is my son? My son is this amazing guy, sweet guy, funny, loves to dance, loves to have a good time. Um, Really just a real smart guy, extremely smart. I mean, he knows how to get around very well. And this is why I have peace, even though I haven't heard from him, because he knows how to get around. Um, when was it? It was like a few years ago. I was looking in my journal yesterday. A few years ago, when he was on the road, he had somebody buy him dinner. Somebody else he met up with a church and they had invited him over for Christmas, like the Christmas party, and he, had like a big feast with them. He knows how to take care of himself. Even though this is all going around, on around me, I am still fine because I am focused on God. God loves our children more than we do. He's in control. He cares more for them than we ever will. So, there was about a what 3 weeks ago, like a fear that did grip me, and when I would pray for my son, I would just have a gut feeling like something is not right. And then, as I've been praying lately on a daily basis, it's just trust God. Just trust God. My son is someone who's not afraid to die. He has a very big spiritual realm to him. It's huge. He has always been very sensitive to a lot of spiritual stuff, very sensitive. One day he said, he was walking down the road and he said he felt like God was walking right next to him. So he is God's, and that is a comfort, guys, when you raise your kids for God. That no matter what happens in life, whether you don't see them for a while or whatever, that God has got them. Even if something bad happens, God has them. And, my son, when he was 19, went down south to find work over by Gulf Shores. And, he had looked and looked for work up here. And he's the type of guy who would go to like 9 different places a day to find work. I mean, he is not just somebody who sits around, but very hard worker, worked at one job like 4 or 5 years, kind of off and on, very hard worker. Just an amazing guy. I mean, I remember when he was younger, he caught a fish with his hands. Very outdoorsy, enjoys camping. But yeah, aside of him, that also enjoys the nicer things in life. He also, would in his teen years like dress a little bit gothic. Um, and then, there was a time when he was at McDonald's that, he had people just picking on him a lot because he was a nice guy. I mean, he walked home one day from working at McDonald's and he had his apron on, and some guy called out to him that he was a fag. And he wasn't, and it's like, why would someone do this? So when we have kids, sometimes other people speak into their lives that make them feel like, wait a minute, let me question my identity, right? And so then when he was down south, there was some times that there were truck drivers who sexualized him and hit on him. There was a time somebody kidnapped him, basically, and tried to sex traffic him, and he actually got away from that. And on it goes. There's a lot of stories with my son. So, and then hanging around with others to try to fit in and just be like, okay, now I think I'm going to go trans and fit in with people. And then talking to him and being like, he was like, no, this crap is stupid. One of the last times I talked to him. So, we even have doctors who will tell our kids, yeah, go ahead and, let me give you hormone pills online. And many times we don't know what they are. They're drugs, right? They're drugs that are online. But one time, my son had experimented with marijuana for the first time in his life. My husband did this on a regular basis growing up, and it was stupid, and I never took part of that because, I don't know, he felt like he didn't care about himself, so he would use marijuana with his friends. But my son had experimented once with it, and it was laced with fentanyl, and we almost lost him. So he had to go to jail. And of course, that's a social experiment, right? With all the medication, and they used people as guinea pigs, and they could not stabilize him. I got him home and said, "You're off the meds." He was back to normal. So a lot of hospitals will not help. There is a what do you call it? There is a, I don't want to say a cycle, but there is a situation where, you bring someone to the hospital, they're like, well, we don't deal with them. Then they say, let the jails deal with them. The jails don't. And on it goes. So there's no real help when people are having either a breakdown or drugs, right? There's no real help. So when my son had something laced, we knew right away that he was on something. I mean, he had come over to the home. We knew something wasn't right immediately. And then after jail, they had him meet with counselors. And of course, they make you feel like something's wrong with you and focus on your faults instead of real solutions, right? Which is, gospel centered, Christian centered. And, for someone who didn't feel like he really fit in with a lot of people, there's that feeling of just feeling like, where do I belong in life? So there's a lot to it. So ladies, be willing as a mom to go through stuff with your sons. Be willing to go through it and not give up on them. So it's been like 10 years and I have not given up on my son. Um, he knows how to take care of himself. For all I know, he could just be living off the grid and be fine. But where I have not heard from him in a long time, it's really concerning to me. And, and there were times too, like when we were at the grandparents, I was like, I don't have a problem with alcohol, but I don't want you drinking around. I don't want alcohol around my kids because alcohol is, and I talked to someone on the streets too, is a huge gateway to many other drugs, a huge gateway. And so one day my son was like, the police had called me, and this started at the beginning, and said, hey, we saw your son up on the bridge in Concord and he was drinking with, Evans, and so you can either come get him or he's going to jail. And I was like, let me see what my husband wants to do. And my husband was like, yeah, leave him in jail. Let him stay the night. And I was like, well, the police officer says he really doesn't think this is a big deal. There's no point of, really making a big deal out of this. He had an open can. I think he was 20 at the time. And first offense, never had gotten in trouble at all with the law. And, I'm like, I'm going to defer to the police officer at this point. And that's what I did. And I'm glad I did do that because it wasn't a major thing. It wasn't major. And so as you're there for your kids, like when my son was down south, he came back up home, he stayed with us again, had a ton of support and did well. And then he hung around. It's always who he hangs around with. Then he hung around with some people, they used him, and then he went down again. Okay. He wasn't even homeless, but he had gone down, got in trouble, was all over the news. He got in trouble, was on, needed medical help. But when I had called the police right before this happened because he had visited, they said, we can't do anything until he commits some kind of crime. So he wasn't even in his right mind. And then he stayed with us again, helped him out again, and there were a couple more things that had happened, and it's always the wrong people he would hang around with. And so he was doing good again when he came over here. He was struggling a little bit, but then he was doing good. He went back to New Hampshire, and something happened again where the police found him. He was sounded like a mental breakdown. So when someone's in that state of mind, this is my concern too. They're not going to function as well as somebody who's in a really good place, right? So I am concerned about him, but ladies, know when you have God on your side, that you can get through this as a mother. I went through I went through my rebellion time as a teenager. I went through my time trying to find myself, figure things out for about a good 5 years. Took a long time for me to kind of get my footing with a bunch of boyfriends and a forced abortion and everything. Lots of things happen in life. Trauma happens. It can take a while to go through stuff with your kids, but be there for them. Don't be a parent who's like, I'm not going to bother with you anymore. Be a parent who's there for your kids. And that's important. I mean, that's important. Like, I was like afraid of oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm going to do the teenage years. When I first became a mom, I was seriously afraid of the teenage years. And as I had a ton of support, I was told when your kids hit the teenage years, they become your best friends. And I think for the most part, you want to be a mom who's for your kids and not against them. And you want to be able to be there for them in creative ways to be able to say, hey, life is tough sometimes, and I still love you, and we're going to get through this. So that's the kind of mentality you want when you're going through, the teen years. So I've had 5 sons, and one lady said to me the other day, "Oh my goodness, 5 sons? One is enough, right? Just one is enough." And so all my guys, for the most part, my guys are a blessing to me. Good guys. I just have this one son who's been through so much, and that doesn't even mention all the times he got used from different people and just a lot. So, um, be there for your guys is my message here. Thanks, guys.